Hello and welcome to the Dumbbell Ben podcast. I'm Dumbbell Ben, as I'm also known on TikTok, dumbbell_Ben. Go follow me over there. I share clips from this podcast, but I also share progress that I'm doing in the gym. Right now I'm working on a front lever, probably still months away, but maybe you'll be watching this at some other time and you'll check in and I'll be able to do it by then. I'm kind of racing my brother with that. He's at Trevolution 1. Go ahead and follow him as well over on TikTok. Of course, this podcast is about looking at the research, trying to get a little bit closer to the research. I go over one research article each podcast and try and go over the abstract as well as the methods, the background, how they set up the study, the results, what weaknesses, what strengths there were of the study. And so today we're going over the study that's called The Acute and Prolonged Effects of Different Durations of Foam Rolling on Range of Motion, Muscle Stiffness, and Muscle Strength. Of course, you can't get everything from any single study. It just gives you a little bit of a hint as to which direction you should be going with your training, and you should look at multiple studies and multiple meta-analysis, which is an analysis of many studies, in order to get a good idea of what you should be doing with your training. And even then, individual variation can make training modalities quite different. So feel free to try some of the stuff out that we go over in all of these different podcasts and see if it works for you, and then give me a comment down below and if it did or not. Also, feel free to always comment with any studies you want me to go over in the future. My goal here is to get a study up and allow you to listen to it in an audio format so you can learn more about the research if you don't have time to read it yourself. So once again, today we're looking at foam rolling and range of motion. And if you look at this study, what they did is they looked specifically into the dosage response of foam rolling and how that played a role in range of motion as well as strength output. The dosages were either one set of 30 seconds, 3 sets of 30 seconds, or 10 sets of 30 seconds with each participant. So they took 45 participants and divided them into those groups. Of course, in previous studies, there had been many research teams that had showed an effect of foam rolling on range of motion and mobility and strength as well. However, the effects on strength and performance are kind of hit and miss as far as if they're positive or negative. They're a little bit varied. One study showed a small improvement in sprint performance, whereas other studies show decreases in overall strength. Either one is to a very small degree, so it's hard to actually quantify whether or not this has any real effect in your training. Now, other studies have shown that the increase in range of motion is short-lived, that within a few minutes to half an hour, the range of motion tends to go back down to basal levels. So this study was specifically looking at if they increased the number of sets they did, as far as foam rolling goes, whether that would have an impact on the overall length of the effect. Now, the participants they took care were untrained individuals who had not been resistance training for at least 3 months. And I think this is important to look at it in both populations in this sense. A lot of people that are foam rolling are resistance trained, which makes it a little bit unapplicable to many of you watching here. However, we can still glean a lot of good information from this. So let's look at some of the assessment methods for what they measured. They measured dorsiflexion range of motion, which means when you're pulling your toe up towards your knee. That's stretching the calf muscle, which is the muscle they were interested in the study. You would hope that all of the results would be the same for other muscles in the body. That isn't necessarily the case, but there have been multiple studies done in range of motion. So we can hope that the other ones are the same and use that in our training, but ultimately we don't know. We'll need to look at more research. So what they did is they put the subjects in a seat. They were leaned back. They had the leg extended at a slight angle at the knee. This was to make sure there wasn't any discomfort in the knee when they tried to dorsiflex the calf. And then what they did is they actually had a isokinetic dynamometer slowly push the foot back. So what that means is that at the same rate of speed, it was pushing the foot up further and further into dorsiflexion. And what they would do is they would have the subjects push a button when it became too painful to resist any longer. Now, they did this treatment before and after the foam rolling regimen, and that was only one of the different markers that they looked into. They also assessed shear elastic modulus of the medial gastrioc. And now this is kind of a wordy way of saying the elasticity of the muscle, right? So what they're really trying to see is how much resistance your muscle gives to the action of extending it. So it's not how far you could go before you can't go any further, but rather how much resistance is put on the machine during that time. They also assessed maximum voluntary isometric contraction. So basically they put the foot at a fairly neutral place, and they had the participants push as hard as they could from that seated position against the machine, and they measured the force output that they were able to achieve. So again, they did all three of these measurements, and then they went ahead and put them through the foam rolling regimen, consisting of either 30 seconds of foam rolling for 1 set, 30 seconds of foam rolling for 3 sets, or 30 seconds of foam rolling for 10 sets, i.e. the highest number of sets actually achieved 300 seconds of foam rolling total. Now, in previous studies, there had been really good results shown with 90 seconds and up of foam rolling. And you'll see the results of this study are actually pretty similar as well. The interesting thing here is they actually had the participants do a dynamic foam rolling process, meaning that they would have them sit on the foam roller and roll it back and forth in their calf at a frequency of 30 cycles per minute. In other words, they would perform 15 cycles, each taking 2 seconds, and that would be 1 set. So they'd go up for 1, down for 1. This one's interesting to me because I actually have seen some really good results in not cycling while foam rolling, but rather finding a point of discomfort and just letting the foam roller dig into it and sitting at that point till you don't have any more pain. And then moving on, you can still do some cycles, but I found a lot of results just in my personal practice with training clients with doing that type of training. I haven't actually seen the studies on which one is better. If you do have any studies on which one is better, go ahead and link them to me in the comments. I'd love to look at them, but as far as what I've seen, I've actually found greater results from, like I said, you foam roll, you find a point that really hurts, gives really good pain, you lean into it till that pain deadens, and then you move through the whole muscle again, try to find if there's any other points of tightness. I find that to be much more effective, and so this form of foam rolling I'm sure is still effective. Maybe it's even more effective, but it's just not how I would do it. So that was interesting to me. Of course, when you look at the individuals who did it for 300 total seconds, I'm sure they got enough time in general, even on the pressure points and on the non-pressure points. Now down here it says that the individuals were told to target a pressure scale rating of 7 out of 10, meaning they were supposed to feel some discomfort, but it wasn't supposed to be too bad. Now this is the part of the study that is hard to validate in my opinion. You'll have some people who get just a paper cut and it's a 10 out of 10 pain. They need to go to the doc, they need to take some ibuprofen. And then you'll have some people who won't even notice it. And, that could be on differences in pain receptor sensibility. There could be many different roles for that, but that could also be on subjective differences in pain tolerance. And that's something this paper goes over a little bit. But here you could even have some individuals not able to push through that pain to actually put enough weight on the foam roller to have anything happen. Because you have to put a substantial amount of weight on the foam roller. That's sometimes things that some people don't realize. They get on the foam roller and they say, it hurts like crazy, it must be bad for me. That's actually what you need to have happen in order to get any results. But let's look into a little bit more of the results here. So what you'll see here is that there is a change in pre and post dorsiflexion range of motion for both the 3 times group and the 10 times group. Right here is where they'll show a little star if it is significant, and that's something that's shown here in the key below. Now, significance again is just a calculation of the reliability of the study, how likely it is to be true, how likely it is that the results aren't by chance. Something that is a little more complicated to calculate, but right here we'll just keep it at that. So the 3 times 30 seconds has significant change, and the 10 times 30 seconds has significant change. The 1 set of 30 seconds has no significance in the change, and that's in dorsiflexion range of motion. Now, if you look at passive torque at dorsiflexion range of motion, there's not a significant change in any of the groups. There's also not a significant change in shear elastic modulus. Now, just like previous studies, all the results went back down to baseline within 30 minutes. So this shows that even with greater amounts of foam rolling, the effect is still time-based and will return very quickly. meaning that in some situations, if you're trying to loosen up for a sporting event, say, probably don't do it more than 30 minutes before the sporting event starts, otherwise it will have minimal to no effect. Now, they discussed here that the increased range of motion could be to an increase in the pain threshold, allowing you to push through more pain while going through greater ranges of motion. And this could definitely be true as far as the torque machine goes that they use in the study. So in the study, as I said at the beginning, they actually used a isometric dynamometer to elevate the foot until the participants could no longer bear the pain. So in conclusion, I want to talk about the conclusion that they made, specifically the last sentence. It says, however, from the viewpoint of injury prevention, since it was shown that foam rolling intervention did not reduce shear elastic modulus, foam rolling intervention might not be an effective warm-up method for injury prevention. Now, there's some nuance here, because what they're thinking is that since elasticity did not increase from the foam rolling, it wouldn't decrease your chances of getting injury, right? So if you were in a basketball game and you decide to foam roll beforehand, then it wouldn't increase your elasticity. Thus, you hyperextend at the hip or something. Your hamstring gets under a lot of stretch tension, and they're saying it didn't increase elasticity, so it would not increase your ability to withstand injury in that situation. And there's probably some truth to that. However, I think this study is a little bit too narrow-minded when it looks at foam rolling, which is what they're trained to do in a study. They're trying to look at very specific variables. But what they're looking at is, will this foam rolling have an effect on this exercise or this workout or this athletic endeavor? And will it help stop injury, or will it help get them a good warm-up to perform good and to increase strength output? And these are all good things to measure. However, I think that foam rolling has more of a beneficial effect in long-term use for a couple reasons. I've seen, just with me and with other people that I've trained, that foam rolling over the course of weeks and months is very, very good at actually increasing overall flexibility chronically. So not just in an acute sense, not just one workout seems to have an additive effect. Do I have the studies for that? No. But that's number one. It does seem to have a great impact on flexibility and mobility if you're going in a long run. But perhaps more importantly, if you are using foam rolling for a warm-up, so you foam roll for 5 to 10 minutes, then you squat for 5, 10 minutes, or 15, however long it takes you to squat, probably more than 5. If it takes you 5, you're probably going too light. But however long it takes you to squat, you warm up for 5 to 10 minutes on the foam roller, squat for 20 minutes, whatever that is. During that squat session, you're probably going to be more mobile, and you're going to be able to go through greater ranges of motion without pain. What that's going to allow you to do is to put your muscles at extreme stretches during all those ranges of motion. So at the bottom of the squat, you're going to have your quads extremely stretched. They're going to be in a vulnerable position, but you're going to also be building strength in the long run for that vulnerable position. And so then when you do set after set, workout after workout, allowing yourself to go through those extreme ranges of motion that you wouldn't be able to get to without the foam rolling, your body's going to build resiliency in those ranges of motion. And your body's going to be used to being in those ranges of motion. And all the tendons that need to pull at those weird angles that they wouldn't need to pull at are going to get strengthened. Because usually, very often at least, what happens in some kind of athletic endeavor is that you hyperextend a joint. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a literal hyperextension, but it means that it's extending past where it would normally go. So even if it's like a bench press, you might just extend past a 90 degree. You might be used to going to 90 degrees and you extend past 90. That's when your chest and your shoulder is often going to get injured because it's extending to a point that it's not used to. So the best way that you can prevent injury, in my opinion, is to train through those really big ranges of motion. Now, you can't always train with super heavy weights to those ranges of motion, and certain muscles you really should use very, very lightweight. They may never even go up in weight. But the idea is to train all your muscles through as big as range of motion possible to prevent injury. And if you're always tight, that's very, very hard to do. So whether you loosen up by either using foam rolling or stretching, use one modality or the other to get as big a range of motion as possible. Now, like I always say, go ahead and go to PubMed, look at the study yourself, see if there's anything I missed, or if there's anything that you want to talk about more in the comments, feel free to comment on that. Comment on any other studies that you think that I could review and hopefully help you out in the future. Again, this study is available on PubMed. It's by Nakamura, and I'll have that link in the description. Tune in next time.